Here's a thought experiment. Imagine tomorrow you wake up and every person you've ever met goes completely blind to your financial life. Your parents, your friends, your ex, your colleagues, everyone you follow online, everyone who follows you back. They can't see your car, they can't see your apartment, they can't see your outfits, your holidays, your lifestyle choices. None of it registers to anyone ever again. The audience is gone. Now, what will you actually do with your money? Because for most people, if they're honest, the answer is different, noticeably different. And that gap between what you'd spend if no one could see and what you actually spend right now, that gap has a name. It's costing you more than you think. And it was designed deliberately to be invisible. My name is Sam. I've spent years asking the questions about money that go beyond budgets and income, the ones about identity, self-worth, and why no amount ever seems to make us feel the way we thought it would. This channel exists because those questions matter more than any financial tip. And this one is a question I keep coming back to. You upgraded the car when the old one worked perfectly fine, not because it drives better, because of how you feel being seen in it. The way it changes what you think people think of you in the 2 seconds they glance over at a traffic light. You spend more on the parts of your life that are visible, the outfits, the restaurants, the holidays, and less on the parts that aren't. The sleep, the health, the boring compound investment account nobody will ever see. You feel a specific pleasure when someone notices something you bought, and a specific quiet deflation when they don't. And here's the uncomfortable version. Some of your biggest financial goals, the house, the salary, the business, if you remove the social layer completely, if you imagine achieving them in total anonymity with no one ever knowing, they feel smaller than expected. Not worthless, just smaller. Because some of what you're chasing isn't the thing. It's the reaction to the thing. The look on a specific person's face. The version of the story you get to tell. You're not funding your life. You're funding an image of it. And the most disorienting part? You didn't consciously choose this. It was built into you carefully, systematically, over years by forces that had a financial interest in making sure you never noticed. The economics of status display are not new. In 1899, before Instagram, before influencer culture, before any of the infrastructure that turned visibility into an economy, a sociologist named Thorstein Veblen published a book called The Theory of the Leisure Class. It is one of the most important books in economic history that almost nobody reads anymore. Veblen had been watching the American wealthy of the Gilded Age, and he noticed something strange. They didn't just buy things because they wanted them, they bought them to be seen buying them. The consumption was the signal. Look how much I can afford to waste. Look how far I am from scarcity. Look where I stand. He called it conspicuous consumption. And he argued it wasn't a quirk of the very rich. It was a fundamental human behavior, the translation of economic position into social visibility. He wrote this in 1899. What social media did was not invent this behavior. It industrialized it. Suddenly, the audience was not just your neighborhood, not just the people at the party. It was everyone, simultaneously, all the time. And the game Veblen identified, the game of using money to signal position, scaled to an audience of billions. The comparison became constant. The incentives became overwhelming, and the spend required to maintain your position in that game became, for most people, quietly, financially catastrophic. Psychologist Robert Cialdini has spent decades studying social proof, the human tendency to look at what others do to determine what we should do. His finding: social comparison is not a weakness of vain or shallow people. It is a hardwired cognitive shortcut. In an uncertain world, looking at what high-status individuals do and mimicking it was an efficient survival strategy. It worked. For most of human history, it worked. The problem is, this system was calibrated for a village, a community of roughly 150 people where your relative status was directly tied to access to food, shelter, mates, and protection. In that world, monitoring your position made sense. Investing in your visibility made sense. But your comparison set is no longer 150 people. It's millions, algorithmically selected to show you the most aspirational version of each of them, their highlight reel, their best angles, their biggest moments. Researcher Sherry Turkle at MIT documented what she calls the performance of self, the process by which social media users don't just share their lives. They curate them, editing out the ordinary, the failure, the mundane Tuesday, and the people watching that curated feed, your curated feed, are making financial decisions in response to it. Studies show that people who spend more time on social media spend measurably more money on visible goods. Not because they're foolish, because the algorithm has made comparison inescapable. And here is what makes this truly strange. Social psychology has a name for the feeling that everyone is watching you. It's called the spotlight effect. Research by psychologists Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky found that people consistently overestimate how much others notice them by a factor of roughly 2 to 1. The audience in your head is twice the size of the real one, and the real one is mostly thinking about themselves. You are spending thousands real money, your money, to impress people who are too busy managing their own performance to notice yours. Let's talk about what this actually costs. Researchers studying household spending patterns consistently find that 20 to 30% of discretionary spending in middle-income households goes toward what economists call positional goods, things whose value is primarily relative to others, not intrinsic. The car that's slightly nicer than your peer groups, the holiday that photographs well, the apartment in the neighborhood that signals what you want people to think about you. Run that number, 20% of your income, over a decade, diverted into signals that the audience in your head, the audience that is twice the real size, is barely registering. That is not a rounding error. That is a decade of compound growth that went into the performance instead of the life. And the cost isn't only financial. There's a subtler loss. Every decision filtered through how does this look instead of how does this feel is a decision that moves you slightly further from your own instincts. Over years, you stop knowing what you actually want because you've been so long asking what you should want, what looks right, what the image requires. The performance starts to replace the person. And you wake up one day with a life that looks exactly right from the outside and feels strangely hollow from the inside, and you can't immediately explain why. So what do you do with this? The answer is not stop caring about how you look. We're human. We care. That's not going away. The answer is not stop wanting nice things. Some things genuinely bring private pleasure. The book, the meal you cook at home, the quality of a mattress that changes how you sleep. Those are real. Those count. The exercise is simpler and harder than any of that. For 1 month, apply what I call the invisibility filter to every non-essential purchase. Before you buy it, ask, would I still want this if no one would ever know I had it? Not never, just would I still want it? The things that pass the filter are what I call private richness, not financial wealth. The richness of an experience that belongs only to you, that wasn't designed to be seen, that no one will ever validate with a like or a comment, and that fills you completely anyway. The things that don't pass the filter, don't stop buying them if they're worth it to you. But know what you're paying for. Know that you are paying Veblen's tax, the tax on status anxiety. Paying it consciously is a completely different thing from paying it in your sleep. And here's what most people find when they run this experiment honestly. Some of what they'd stop spending on, they don't miss at all. And some of what they'd start spending on the things that survive the filter, the things that matter when no one's watching, those are the things, in 10 years, they'll actually remember having. Try the invisibility filter this week. One purchase, just one. Ask the question and see what comes up. If you did it and want to share what you found, comment below. I read everyone. And if you want the follow-up, where we go into the actual numbers of how much status spending is costing you and how to run your own honest audit, let me know and I'll make that next video.